Thanks for tuning in. This is the Business of Intuition podcast with Dean Newland. Dean is taking the week off, a well-deserved week away, but we don't want you to miss the content. So here is a classic rewind episode of the Business of Intuition.
I'm Dean Newland, and welcome to the Business of Intuition, where I coach, facilitate, train, and speak on the hard science and meaningful experience of intuitive leadership in business, so you can make better decisions, forge real connections, and creatively solve problems to amplify your impact and simplify your life. Welcome to the Business of Intuition.
All right, so I'd like to introduce Joanne Mathews, whom I've known now for 2 years, and I'll just do a quick background on you. You've had a really interesting career. I know that for a long time you worked with Charles Schwab.
Correct, yes.
And had a fairly senior executive position there. And then you and your family, I believe, moved up from the Bay Area.
Yep.
I mean, I'm right?
Yes.
To Bend, Oregon, where we met. And I guess I wanted to ask you, now that you are so involved in helping people clarify their presentations, you do some TED coaching, and we'll talk more about that. And you're very good at helping others get clear about their message and their presentations. What got you from working with Charles Schwab to doing this kind of work? How does it connect? Why the transition? Why not do something else? How did you come up with that?
Interesting question. It's like the classic case of everything in your life leading you to exactly where you are at a certain point. And this was really funny because I took a break. I worked for Schwab for 17 years. I had some other positions prior to that. Decided to take a long break. I had young kids. We lived in Bend. I felt disconnected from the community. I had been traveling 60% of the time. You know, it was just time to slow down and hang out. And I did for 5 or 6 years. And then I started to get antsy, and I was thinking, you know, in a town like Bend, there's probably something that I have a unique experience, knowledge that this community could use. There aren't a lot of people with backgrounds like mine running around Bend. I just sort of decided I'd kind of leave myself open and see what turned up. Almost immediately, I started to notice that we really lacked, as a community, the ability to give great presentations. I was getting very involved. I was on a couple boards, getting very involved in the community, and just kept on noticing that when leaders or speakers had the benefit of a captive audience, they were sort of wasting that opportunity. That just so happened to be something that had dogged me throughout my entire career. I had never been a natural public speaker. I always wanted to be. I didn't mind being on stage and everything, but I always got very nervous and very unclear and, you know, all the normal issues. I worked on it and I worked on it. I did Toastmasters. I did improv. I went to a week-long corporate presentation coaching class sponsored that Schwab sent me to. It was something the company really valued, that skill. So I felt like I was sort of understanding it more and more. Then, and this kind of gets right to your question, I happened to be, once we moved to Bend, I was in this field position and I was traveling all the time, and I was getting up in front of groups of about 150 people. I'll spare you all the details. And I had a number of regional offices that I worked with, and we'd go to great lengths to get people together. We were trying to grow a particular program that we were working on. When we had everybody together, we did this wonderfully entertaining dog and pony show. You know, we talked about data, we talked about stories, best practices, so on and so forth. One fateful day, I was waiting to go on stage, and I started to add up the value of the time in the room. I sort of understood how people were compensated. You know, this was financial services. A lot of the people in the room were clients, investment advisor clients. And I came up with the number $60,000. So people had given up $60,000 of productivity to be there with us.
Be with you.
Yeah.
Or to be in the room. Got it.
So that was like,
wow.
Okay, that's different.
No pressure.
What the heck are we doing just phoning it in?
Yeah, right.
Something has to, everybody, no matter who your audience is, they all have another alternative for the time they spend with you, right? And so the time they spend with you, what you offer has to be the highest, best use of that time. You can't squander it. And it also, that doesn't even begin to address the level of effort that you've gone into to be there and be prepared and so forth. Something has to happen. I had this major epiphany back then. Then I'm going to all these local presentations and community meetings and whatnot. And I'm just like, God, this is so sad. There's so many missed opportunities. And then I'm like, wait, I sort of get this. I should really be sharing what I know. You know what I mean? So does that answer your question? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I heard that people do not really fear public speaking as their number one fear. It's really more about being judged or the fear of being judged. And I guess the thing that I was wondering from your perspective is, if I were to work with you, and I know I did work with you, so I should be fully transparent because you were my TED Talk coach.
Best client ever.
Oh, yeah, right. If he could just figure out what he wanted to say.
That's the hardest part.
Yeah, that's the hardest part.
That's nothing new.
But aside from the fact of our relationship, and I think you're awesome at what you do. So I will ask this question for those who are listening to this. I want to be a good public speaker, but I'm just so afraid.
Right.
How do I get over the nerves? What do I do?
Right.
What's your recommendation?
Oh, boy. First of all, I think, number one, you mentioned that it's the fear of being judged or being rejected, right? So one quick thing you could do is start thinking about that and think about how often when you are in the audience for a speech or a presentation or whatever, how often are you rejecting the speaker? Typically audiences, and certainly we can all think of examples of, whatever. I think of politicians or whatever, where we have actually rejected messages and things like that. But typically we're in the audience because we want to learn, we want to hear, we're curious. We want to hear we want to get to know this person. Usually audiences are very much on the side of the speaker. They want them to succeed. You mentioned TED Talks. That's a classic example. A TED audience has the best energy, for just being excited and curious. So there's that. But getting into technique, I think a lot of it has to do with getting out of your own head and getting into your audience's heads. You are only a conduit for information. It's not about you, it's about what you're saying, and really take that to heart. Or we hear the line, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. That's not true. It's what you say. And what you say and your connection to what you say will dramatically affect how you say it and how compelling you are. So number one, getting into the heads of your audience. If you spend a half hour thinking about your audience before a big speech or presentation, you will be way ahead, because you will have thought through what they're about, what they're interested in. Our goal when we speak is to give our audience a gift. We need to go to where they are and bring them along. Thinking about them on, I always say, 3 dimensions: demographic, psychographic, and situation. Situation's a classic one that tends to get ignored. Is it a Zoom call? Is it first thing in the morning? Is it after lunch? Is it in a dark room? What exactly is happening for the people that you're trying to connect with and engage? Super important to understand that and to design your content so that it meets that. The other 2 things are super important, and none of these I think is more important than the other, but is having a point. A lot of times we get up and we just want to get through something. I've definitely delivered a lot of speeches like that way. Like, I just need to get this out and get through it. Having a captive audience is more powerful than having a website or having a brochure or having an advertisement. It is a way to immediately bring about change in perspective, change in knowledge level, change in feelings, you name it. what is it that needs to change while you're spending this time? Whether you have 5 minutes to do an introduction or an hour to do a full-on keynote session. What is your main point? If they take nothing else away, what is that going to be? So get focused. That's what you care about more than anything, is getting that one big thing across. And then the other thing is having a goal. What if you go into your speaking opportunities and you have a very clear idea of what you want to have happen? You have a way to measure whether or not you were successful in that time. Goals can be short-term. They can be, is everybody paying attention to me? Are they nodding? What's the body language? Are they taking notes? That kind of thing. They can be long-term. I worked with the executive director of a local nonprofit. He was speaking in front of a Rotary group, and his goal was to get over half the group to sign up for a private tour. He was talking about their conservation efforts and the importance of being out on the land. He viewed his opportunity was with them, 20-minute Rotary Club presentation, as just a way to start the conversation. He didn't need to educate them soup to nuts about the organization. He wanted to start the dialogue, and the next step in the dialogue was to get them out on the land. So if he could put together something compelling enough that at the end over half of them would want to sign up to go on a private tour, he was successful. And he did.
I think I bring up a great point there about this idea around what is the goal, what's the sort of change I want to see as a result of what I'm saying is really key. And I know that in other types of communications that we're involved in, that's what we're trying to teach our clients is don't just send off a buckshot worth of information and hope it does something.
Good.
Clarify what it is that you want to change first, and then backfill your communication to that. And now you've got a focused approach to something that is tangible.
Bingo.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
And a couple other things, I was making some notes as you were talking here, that the idea around preparation is, I thought that was key. And I don't think that people realize just how much preparation goes into a really good talk.
Yes.
I remember I was coaching a gal once out of a healthcare company, and she was really good at improv, and she just had this sort of, I'm really good at I can handle this. And she had sort of built up her ego and her identity around being able to think on her feet. And then she got hit with a bunch of questions that she wasn't prepared for. And she was stuck, and she hadn't prepared and had a lot of egg on her face that she had to clean up later. So the other question I want to ask you about, and this maybe kind of goes into your discussion that you and I had prior to getting on this podcast around improv. And I'm not trying to knit in the conversation of intuition. If it's supposed to, it is. If it isn't, I get it. But what I sort of experience when a training, when a speech is going well, there is a feeling of being, I might call it, in the flow.
Yeah.
That presence is really key. I'm connected to the audience. Time seems to stop. I can read the audience well and respond to it. And that's when one of my goals might be, did I feel that way?
Sure.
Because if I can achieve that, I know that I've done a pretty good job of creating that environment. And then intuitively, I can pivot based on what seems to be the energy in the room. How do you help people achieve that kind of refinement in their presentations? I just spent 3 weeks getting this thing down. And now I'm supposed to let it go and be in the flow and maybe go in a different direction. How do I trust to do that?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So if I understand your question, it's how do you sort of let go and trust that it's going to work? A lot of speakers have a fear, for example, of looking really scripted, or really stiff or whatever. When can you let down your guard and just go with the flow, as you said, right? And I do think there's a lot of intuition that goes into this, and if you're okay with it, I'll elaborate on that in a second.
Of course. I mean, we got a little partial to the topic. I don't know.
No, I know. I am too. But I think one way to get to that level, it's really weird. And I've seen this play out so many times, but you cannot over-rehearse. The more you know your material, the more you can get in the flow state. What I'm not encouraging here is verbatim reciting of a big speech or presentation. That's not what you're hoping for. What you're hoping to do is get to the point where you understand what you're saying and why you're saying it and what the value is to the audience so well that you're able to just express it comfortably. You can put all the right emphasis on all the right, what is it? Put the right emphasis on the correct syllable or whatever it is.
Right,
But you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
you know what you're doing. You're so intent. You're on a mission. You're so clear on what you need to, what your point is, what you need to accomplish, and where your audience is, that you just go for it. This is where your delivery technique comes in. Like with delivery techniques, it used to be there was a right place to put your arms, a right way to stand, right place to be on the stage. No, what we want now, and I think TED has done a lot to support this, is authenticity. Be you. You know, the best presentation you can give, and anyone can do this, I firmly believe, comes from just who you are and your passion and why you care. Did I go around your question? Did I get to it?
No, that was a good answer. I liked it. I'll have to say, though, that this is just me personally, that one of the hardest speeches or presentations I ever gave was the TED Talk I did in Bend.
Yeah.
And people have asked me, well, why is that? And I said, because I had to memorize it. And it wasn't that I had to, but I had a certain time frame, and knowing me and the way I can riff, I know that I was going to go over if I just went and spoke extemporaneously about a topic that I knew pretty well. And even such, I still went over.
That's all right.
And so I found it really hard to be confined in a memorization. I prepared, I don't want to tell you how much I prepared. I prepared a lot for that. I think you knew that.
I know
we
that.
talked a lot about it. And still I think I was more afraid of losing a word than I was of losing the message. And that's where my mind started to play tricks on me. So can we be really authentic and in the flow, giving a speech that has been memorized?
Sure. Why, I want to ask you, why do you think it was important for you to memorize it?
Because I felt confined by time.
Confined by time. Okay.
I think it was that I had a limited amount of time, and there was a pretty strong, at least in my opinion, at least we needed to keep to that time. And so that's why I felt like, all right, I better memorize this, because I think that I would easily go over it. And even as it was, those of you who haven't done TED Talks before, you have this red circle that you stand in the middle of, and you're not supposed to deviate from that red circle. And it's about 6 foot square, 6 foot diameter. And then there's a monitor that's blinking up your time, going down from the top of your minutes all the way down to your last second. And then when you go over that, it starts blinking this red light at you.
I think that's universal.
Oh, it is nerve-wracking. And then you can't see beyond the 10th row.
Right.
Your mouth is as dry as the Sahara Desert. There's no water to drink.
It is an extreme situation.
It is extreme.
Sure.
But it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun, and I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Would you memorize the way you did last time?
Probably not. I think that I would start to rehearse without words and just go with going back to our conversation around the flow.
Yeah.
And try to keep the sequence of thoughts within a time frame versus the words.
Right. By the way, I have to just say, I've coached a lot of TED Talkers. You were so fun to work with.
Well, you were so fun to work with, too.
Oh, get out. There are some funny stories. But that dot, the only person who didn't have a problem with it was a different person I coached who had been in prison for 70 months. And we did a calculation, and the dot was pretty much the space that he lived in. The
so
area
this was
of
like
the dot.
His living room.
Yeah. So I think he actually mentions that in the talk. He talks about his background. But anyway, now TED Talks are different because they have to be so tight, right? And so you've mentioned a lot of the constraints that you have. And so there is a lot more memorizing going on. But generally speaking, there's two things that, in my view, drive the importance of repeated rehearsal, practice, testing. And they are, if you're not prepared that way and you're speaking, as you said, extemporaneously, you're going to go off point. We've all seen it a million times. Typically, speakers give too much context before they get to the good stuff. That's like a common thing. It's almost expected, but it's not sharp and it's not entertaining and interesting for an audience. So if you're going off extemporaneously, you're likely to pull something in that might dilute or mess with your one big thing, the one thing that the audience needs to get across. That's the risk. The other risk is leaving something really important out of a speech. If you haven't rehearsed it enough, you can glide through, and then, especially in a TED situation, kind of like at the end go, oh my God, I left something out.
Well, I can say that I did the same thing. I left an important sentence. I went, oh God,
it wasn't
no.
the end. It was fine. Everybody does.
Yeah.
This is why one thing I would say, I somebody near and dear to me is obsessed with trying not to use notes when he's giving business presentations. And I'm just always pushing back on that and saying, just have an outline. Don't run the risk of leaving a super important chunk out of the message. Don't miss something. People don't care if you've got notes in front of you. There are TED Talkers who have notes in front of them.
So you mentioned Toastmasters, you've been involved with that. And then you talk about TED and how it has influenced our paradigm around public speaking. And then you start throwing other things into the mix that a lot of us are feeling disconnected, especially right now as we go through the COVID-19 crisis. But in general, there's this feeling of disconnection, and we're being bombarded by billions of bits of information sort of screaming for our attention. It feels like to me that the requirements or the public speaker framework is changing from what it was, say, 10 years ago. Or 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It used to be pretty stiff and you'd stand at a podium. I mean, I still go to speeches and workshops and facilitations, and the hotel automatically gives me a podium, and I never use them.
Yeah,
because
good.
we're still sort of like
Good.
sort of socialized into thinking I got to have myself separated from my audience with this podium. So I guess my question is, Joanne, what is the public speaker of the future evolving into? What are we looking toward moving forward here? Given the world as it is, what's going to make a really good speaker in the future that maybe wasn't the case 10 years ago?
Oh, great question. And by the way, I don't recommend saying great question to every question.
Thank you, Beth.
I
don't want my ego
genuinely.
to get too big.
No, I think we see that a lot,
It could be just a way of sort of like giving yourself some time to come up with an answer.
Exactly. Great. Such an interesting,
think about that for a
question.
while.
What was it again? I've actually seen people do that. So the public speaking of the future, I think more and more authenticity. I think anyone can be fabulous to watch and listen to if they're coming from this place of passion, and if they've taken the time to get into my mind and the rest of the audience's mind and come to us with their information, not starting out with a lot of jargon, for example, but like telling a story that makes us intrigued, and hooks us in. So I think we're going to see more and more of that. I hope that we do start to abandon what you alluded to, the focus on the ums and ahs. That is not the point of public. You can throw one or two of those in there. They become a problem when they're a distraction and there's just way too many happening. But I think getting away from these rigid concepts and starting to express our creativity more and care for the audience more is the direction of public speaking in the future. I think it's like I started thinking about college applications. Way back when you used to fill out a college application, there was an essay, you pretty much followed the standard thing. Now people are putting together musical pieces. You hear about all these crazy, creative, wonderful ideas that prospective students have of getting themselves to stand out and their message to stand out. And I think the same is true with public speaking. I think that's where we have to go. And that's where, by the way, intuition comes in. if you've done your homework, before you put pen to paper, any kind of outlining, scripting, whatever you do, if you've thought about your audience deeply, if you've decided what the one big thing your audience needs to take away, what the gift is they're going to get from you, from your presentation, and if you have a goal, then you can think really broadly about how you're going to accomplish what you want to accomplish. May not involve PowerPoint. This is where, okay, what would work if I want to convince a group to go on a hike? Maybe I should show them pictures of the beautiful places they'd get to see, right? Or maybe I have an endorsement from a family that went on a wonderful hike, or a story or whatever. There's just so many different ways to get a point across above and beyond a PowerPoint deck. So intuitively, what does your intuition tell you that you can uniquely present in a way that's going to be compelling? So humor is a good example. There are people who are really good with humor, and there are people who aren't. A great speech doesn't need humor. But if you happen to bring that to the table and it's something that connects you to your audience, then figure out a way to work it in. Intuition, too, is listening to that little voice in your head. If you're in a corporate situation like I was for so long, people are telling you what needs to go in a presentation all the time, and a lot of times they're senior to you and everything. So you're like, okay, yeah, that'll go in. Well, the next thing you know, you've just got a pile of nothing. What does your intuition tell you about adding things? Is there a different way to get information across than putting it in your presentation? Can you do a handout or whatever the case is? As you practice and as you go through, if you find yourself racing through one part, and we probably talked about this way back when, to get to the interesting stuff, that's your intuition saying, this is boring. So what are we going to do about that? You should love every single sentence, particularly with the TED Talk. Now, and again, disclaimer about TED Talks, they are the holy grail, of presenting. They are, every single piece is mapped out. People practice TED Talks 200, 300 times, before they go online, and they block it, and they do everything. So every speech doesn't need to have that much preparation, but you do need to get those three things straight, I think.
Well, again, if you could do a TED Talk, then you've experienced that. I'm not saying that everybody should, but it does help you with everything else you do.
Yeah.
To push yourself to that. And I just was sort of thinking about what you said about passion, preparation, authenticity, storytelling. If you have the ability for humor, you throw it in. I mean, as I summarize all this, it feels like you're suggesting that we need to sort of transport people into a different way of thinking and to create a space, almost like going back to your thought around improvisation. We're creating a space, a theater, a stage to enter into with them so that we can have a higher level discussion, a higher level awareness or a breakthrough of ideas that is different from everything else they've done.
Yeah.
Like I went somewhere. You took me on a journey. I'm not saying literally, but in my mind, you've got me going. You've like reading a really good story. I've been transported from whatever I came from into your space. And thank you, speaker, for doing that. That I think is what I think you're saying.
Yeah. Think of your TED Talk and how much storytelling played into proving the point that we absolutely have to use intuition when we make business decisions. We need to listen to the inner voice, right?
Yeah.
Or data, or you used data, you used stories, you painted a picture. You started with a hook that brought us along. It should.
Well, I owe it all to you. It was
not
all
at
yours.
all. You owe it all to you.
There.
You owe it all to you.
Thick and thin. You were 3:00 in the morning sending me emails.
Oh, right.
And texts. And again, I do have to thank you.
We
for
were
that.
in different time zones, if that's
I will
the case.
be forever in debt. It was you were a great advocate.
It was a joy. It was a joy.
So I guess it just sort of, if people want to connect with you in the future, how can they do that?
Well,
what's coming up for you?
What's coming up for me? Well, with our little situation these days, a lot of my classes are on hold, but I have a website where I have classes listed all the time. I can coach remotely too. Should I give the website?
Absolutely.
Okay. It's Joanne.
I got to remember it. She went up on her line.
jmatthewsconsulting.com.
There you go.
Mathews, Mathews, consulting.com.
And we will have it in the podcast notes.
Awesome. And I'm happy to put like if you're interested, I can give you a sheet to post of just some like tips for giving.
Awesome. That would be great. And I do think you should write a book someday. And I do think you should have your own podcast. So
Thank you. Well, you know what I'm working on? What do you think of this idea? I'm working right now. This is what's great about the situation we're in is you retrench and get to think bigger. I'm creating a book that should be a kit for a speaker. You go in, I'm still working through it, but it's highly interactive. You have a speech to give. It starts with all the thinking, strategic thinking that we've talked about. It takes you through the process of actually mapping out and delivering a speech.
So will this be like a book?
It might. I want to do it online and a book, but you're writing, you're watching videos,
so it's step-by-step guide.
Yeah, you learn how to like tape yourself, to watch yourself.
That'd be great.
And stuff like that. So that's what I'm spending my days working on now. I haven't been able to find one like that.
I will look forward to seeing it, and we'll certainly have anybody who listens to this go to your website, and
awesome.
We can keep people up to speed on how that's going. Joanne, this has been a lot of fun. I could talk to you for 2 hours, but thanks for your time on this.
Thank you for listening to The Business of Intuition. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about Dean or Mission Facilitators Leadership, go to mfileadership.com. That's mfileadership.com.